everyone in crypto appreciates that the dollar is going down against Bitcoin, for example. That's like the long thesis, right? Dollar gets debased, Bitcoin goes up. That can happen in a world where the dollar is still the strongest world currency, though. And so when you go to stables, whenever you do take profit, you're happy to be in stables. The issue now that has happened since the top of the year is that you go into your stable dollars because that's the main market for stable coins. But now the dollar is getting weaker, like a lot weaker against a lot of other currencies. Legendary took a portion, if not all, I can't remember exactly, of his stable coins and went into euros because that's his home currency, needs to pay tax in that, etc., whatever. But and is basically up 15% as a consequence of that move, which is meaningful. Like, that's a very meaningful move between the euro and the dollar since the start of the year. And the question I've been asking myself as Trump tweets things like this is the dollar going to stay? Is that trend going to continue? Is the dollar, yeah, fine. We all know the dollar's already going to depreciate against Bitcoin. That's a given if you're in crypto. The question is, what do you do with the idea of the dollar getting weaker against all the other currencies at the same time? And so, just for context, so this tweet that he shared the other day was, sorry, yesterday, he said, for all cost-cutting Republicans, of which I am one, remember, you still have to get reelected. Don't go too crazy. We will make it all up times 10 and with growth in capital letters more than ever before. So we've said many times already over the last few months, any semblance of trying to deal with the debt by cost cutting has been thrown out the window. Like, we can say that is not something that is going to happen now. The objective is to inflate the debt away, to grow the economy instead of do any kind of harsh measures to deal with the debt. So of course, on some level, that means you would assume risk assets are going to move. You've got interest rates very, very likely to come down if Powell doesn't do it himself, although Polymarket is suggesting that he should or will very soon. If he's not going to do it, they're going to be replacing Powell. His time's coming up anyway, so he'll get replaced. Rates will come down. But the tariff situation has created this environment where the dollar is now not as strong in the world. So my question, Legendary, and maybe I'll share some of my reflections as well. I know you've been thinking about this, is how are you managing that aspect of the dollar getting weaker? Sure, we know the dollar is going to get weaker against Bitcoin now. Dollar getting weaker against all other currencies. How are you thinking about that? How are you managing the portfolio?
I think the first question when someone asks themselves this is, what is your home currency? And the answer is totally different for someone whose home currency is dollars, as opposed to someone whose home currency is not in dollars. If you basically live in the US and you operate in dollars, it doesn't matter too much, because I would make the argument you already have a risk on portfolio. If you're in crypto, that is, you already have your BTC exposure and other things that you're speculating on. You probably don't need that additional layer of FX speculation on top of what you're doing. However, if you're not denominating in dollars and if your home currency is different to that, then this becomes a very significant question, because if you put $1 million in stablecoins in dollars and that then goes down to, I don't know, 850K, 860K, those 140K could very well be your tax payment for the last year. And that's very annoying to lose that. So if your home currency is not the dollar, then you should be thinking about having moved or moving your stables to whatever your home currency is, and just not have this long tail risk. And I looked over the weekend, because we talked about that last week, what analysts were thinking towards the end of 2024 of how the dollar will perform in 2025. And for example, JP Morgan had this beautiful article saying that dollar keeps defying gravity, is incredibly strong, and will probably continue to do so in 2025 and just get stronger than that. So the point here is not to attack JP Morgan, but the point here is to say it is so complex what happens, and it's so policy driven, and it's so driven by all the tariff wars and so many other exogenous factors, that it's unrealistic to think that you can basically forecast how the dollar is going to move against what currency specifically. And that is also The point that I wanted to make again, when I traded out of the dollar and into the euro at the start of the year, that was more a defensive move because I saw the dollar was like so strong, and I expected that that might change. But it was also a defensive move to make sure that the capital that I have in stables stays stable, and that to me means it stays stable in my home currency. So I absolutely did not anticipate that this move is going to be so strong. Now, if you look at it from the perspective of this administration, obviously a weaker dollar is helping with exports being cheaper, or imports being cheaper for countries importing stuff that the US is exporting, because their home currencies are getting stronger and stronger. So that is, or might be, a reason why we currently, or why the US is currently liking a bit of a weaker dollar. But again, I think it's so impossible to just forecast where this journey is going and how all the other factors, macro, tariffs, Fed decisions, will play into that, that I think you shouldn't be overly worried about what the dollar does if that's your home currency. And if it's not, you should have exposure to your local currency as well.
I don't know. I think so. I think a lot of the thinking is good there. I just wonder whether, because dollar's not my home currency either. So in some ways, I have to do a little bit of a similar strategy to you out of necessity. Hypothetically, and fortunately, we've got someone for whom the dollar is the home currency, so we can ask him in a second. But I think even if the dollar was my home currency, which it isn't, I feel like this set of environments specifically is making me think more, and maybe I should have done this earlier, but it's happening now, and we have to deal with it just how it is. I'm thinking more about gold as well. Like I've never really had a significant gold position. I just feel like this is the right time to have some or more, along with Bitcoin. Yeah, it's not something I've considered before. I do think that the trend continues, basically. And as a consequence, because look, as you said, if America wants to grow out, we will to quote Trump, we will make it all up times 10 with growth, capital letters. He does have a habit of just telling us what they're thinking. A weak dollar is nicer for that, right? It's going to help with moving their product around the world if the dollar is weaker. So I just think it's a great time to hold assets more than ever. I know we're already in that environment because we're bullish on crypto and think the dollar's going down, but like I think out of the proportion of things that I have in stables and think like, right, this is my stable stash in order to do whatever, I feel like I'm going to like take a slice out of that and put some in gold.